Hoover head coach Chip English decides to push all his chips in. He goes for two, and the Bucks beat Hewitt-Trussville 8-7. Last weekend was a wild one. This is the Under the Lights podcast. We're talking about high school football here. I'm Kyle Parmley at Starnes Media. Gary Lloyd's over here as well. Gary, what did you think of the Bucks' decision to go for two and the win?
Well, if you believe Coach English when we talked to him post game, thank goodness Jonah Winston's helmet fell off because Winston dives in to get Hoover's first points of the game, 7-6. Helmet comes off. When that happens, you got to sit out a play. And Coach English kind of grinned at us when we're standing there, and he said, he's our holder, so we couldn't have him in to hold the ball, so we had to go for it. A little tongue-in-cheek there, but that was clearly the decision and proved to be a really good one for Hoover.
Yeah, it's a great start to the Under the Lights game of the week. And now we're here at the Under the Lights podcast presented by SYNLawn. All season long, SYNLawn Alabama has got us covered on the podcast. They're your go-to for all things artificial turf. Whether you're looking to upgrade your backyard, create a pet-friendly space, or enhance your golf game with a custom putting green, SYNLawn has a solution for you. With top-notch installations for both residential and commercial use and wholesale turf sales, SYNLawn Alabama is the premier choice for artificial turf in the state of Alabama. Call 205-590-9549 or visit their showroom at 2018 Old Montgomery Highway. And that's SYNLawn. Artificial grass never looked more natural. Gary, like you said, that was just an unbelievable game. Battled the rain. It was just it was a second straight week. We battled the rain, and it was a sloppy game. Neither offense could do much, and it almost looked like Hewitt's lone touchdown in the second quarter was going to be enough.
Yeah, I think they were rather – I don't know what your read on it was after Hoover scored and went for two and got it. And then, Hewitt-Trussville, to their credit, they get a good return. Hoover's called for a penalty, gets them to about, close to midfield. They hit a 20-yard pass, and it sets up a last-second field goal that just missed off to the right a little bit. I just, standing on the Hewitt-Trussville sideline at that moment, I think they were rather stunned because, your defense played really well. You're pitching a shutout the whole game, and it just felt like, for the whole game, it felt like a 7-0 lead, felt almost like 14-0 in some sort of weird way. And then to have it pulled from you right there in that last couple of minutes, just shock on the Hewitt-Trussville side and obviously jubilation on the Hoover side. You kind of feel in a way like Hoover kind of stole one here, and certainly that Hewitt-Trussville let one kind of slip away in what we kind of thought would be ultimately maybe one of the most important 7A Region 3 games all year for playoff positioning. So we'll see how that turns out moving forward, but certainly felt like a key swing potentially for that 2 spot in the region.
Yeah, and if you're following our Under the Lights page at UnderLights365 on X, you would have seen all this on Friday night. It was a great night to follow along with everything we had going on in the Hoover game and so much more. All right, so we're about to play you a clip. The first play is Jonah Winston's touchdown that cut it to 7-6, then the 2-point conversion play, and then some thoughts after the game.
That decision to go for two, what did it come down to for you?
Jonah got his helmet knocked off, and he was our holder, so we needed a different play.
Man, it felt great. We were fighting adversity all game, We couldn't get anything going, and then we came out, we scored, and we won the game. Man, it was a heck of a game from defense. You got to shout out the defense. They shut them out almost, only one score. We came out and we fought, and the team really just fought all the way to the end. We came out with a W.
All right, so big win for Hoover. Gary, that game was just, like you mentioned, it was just looked like a 7-0 type of game. And Hoover's offense struggled so much that they put Jonah Winston in at quarterback there in the fourth quarter. If you remember last year, Jonah had to play quarterback a lot because the Bucks just really didn't have any answers on offense. And Jonah took Hoover. I mean, they were backed up inside their own 5-yard line, and without much threat of a pass, they drove down the field and nearly scored. But they put Mac Beeson back in for that final game-winning drive. It's kind of improbable how it all played out.
Yeah, I mean, he was an absolute spark plug, especially in that fourth quarter. You know, Mac Beeson had struggled much of the night. I think had 3 turnovers, maybe a fumble and 2 interceptions, if memory serves. And then yeah, like that one drive in particular, I think I had it tallied as Hoover went 20 plays and went 86 yards and came away with no points.
Yeah.
They got it all the way, into the red zone and had to go for it on a 4th and goal from the 9. Didn't get it. And you kind of felt then, this is about 3 minutes to go, you felt like Hewitt Trustful, all you need to do is get a first down. Get a first down, get a couple first downs, and you win this thing 7-0. And Hewitt Trustful goes 3 and out. The Hoover defense kind of stood tall there, forced a punt, and then they had proven on that last drive that hey, we're finding something here with Jonah. They get Mac back in the game, make some really key throws. That throw down to the 1 to, I think it was Reggie Jackson, was just a wonderful throw, maybe an even better catch, toeing the line there for Reggie. And then Jonah punches it in from there. So that game, not a lot happened for about 46 minutes. And then the last couple of minutes were just boom, 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 boom. So the Under the Lights game of the week delivers again.
Absolutely did. And here on the Under the Lights podcast presented by SYNLawn, let's run through the rest of the games from last week. We'll start with Spain Park 28, Helena 26. It didn't look like this game was going to be that close. Spain Park opened up a 2-touchdown gap there in the third quarter, but credit to Helena for not yielding. They scored 2 touchdowns, and on that second one, they were attempting to go for 2 in the tie, but they don't get it. And Spain Park goes to 3-0.
Yeah, I think Spain Park is probably starting to learn how to finish some of these games. They were up a good bit in that Hoover game too, right? And then let Hoover back in a little bit. Helena comes back a bit. So, got to keep your foot on the gas and, get some stops and keep that offense rolling down the field. But, I mean, at the end of the day, it's in the win column, and it's in the region win column against what might be the next best team in that region. So, a really big win in 6A Region 3 for Spain Park, off to a great start there. And we'll see how it goes the rest of the way for them. Helena might be the next toughest team after Spain Park. So as long as Spain Park, has that 1-0 mindset and does what they need to do each week, I think they'll like where they find themselves come November.
A team getting its first win of the year. Vestavia Hills beats Hillcrest 49-17. Charlie Taff had a ton of yards. He threw the ball really well, and then he also ran for nearly 200 yards on the ground. So for the Rebels to kind of get off the schneid and really blow out a Hillcrest team that isn't bad, that was really impressive for Vestavia to get on the board in the win column.
Yeah, I mean, that was, we talked about it last week about how that was a must-win game for both teams. You don't want to go to 0-2 in the region. And like you said, Hillcrest, new to the region. We know they're not a bad team. We've seen what they've done in 6A. We know some of the guys on that team. We've got a really good running game, a really good quarterback. Their defense over the years has been really good. Not off to the greatest start this year. And to lose your first 2 region games, both at home, that's a really tough start. So they're going to be digging out of quite a hole. And if you're Vestavia Hills, you found it. You absolutely found it. They've been searching. They've gotten guys back. And like you said, Charlie Taft, my goodness, what a performance. And to put up 49 points on the road. And you know what? Credit to both those coaches, Coach Mitchell at Hillcrest, Coach Evans at Vestavia, for moving that game up to the 4 o'clock hour. Didn't see other teams moving up that far. I wish I would have made the drive to Hillcrest instead of getting soaked to the bone at Hewitt Trustful. But a huge win for Vestavia Hills, getting even now in the region at 1-1, and everything they want's ahead of them at this point.
I know why. I get why. I understand 7 o'clock, but the idea of a 4 o'clock game on a Friday afternoon, I never had even thought about how appealing that would be. But that is awesome.
Yeah. Could you imagine, like, what would deadline be if our games were at like 4 o'clock in the afternoon? Would our deadline be at like 7 p.m.?
I'd make them 8 o'clock so that, but I wouldn't know what to do with myself. I've never even had to consider making plans on Friday night. So,
Could watch some Pac-12 After Dark or something on Friday nights.
or just watch my Kansas Jayhawks lose, which is
Yeah.
unfortunate.
Pretty soon we won't even have the Braves to watch on Friday nights if they keep playing the way they're playing.
Yeah, they're about to be out of the playoff race. That's usually a staple of October Friday nights for me, is obsessing and stressing over the Braves game while trying to cover a high school football game. So I may not have to do that. But all right, let's run through a few more scores. Another team that got their first win of the year. We might have to roll back the tape, Gary. I want to say that I said that 2 of the 3 0-3 teams would get their first win. I don't know that I specified which ones, but Vestavia did, and then John Carroll gets their first win. They beat Hayden 35-6. Homewood blast Woodlawn 52-14. The Patriots offense looks unstoppable. Mountain Brook beats Pell City 41-14 and they completed 1 pass in the game. So if that tells you anything about the Spartans' running attack, Clay Chalkville shuts out Shades Valley 42-0. Carver, Birmingham knocks off Briarwood 20-7, and Thompson gets past Oak Mountain 42-7. Those are the rest of your Friday night scores on the Under the Lights podcast presented to you by SYNLawn. Gary, anything else from that list of results that we need to hit on before moving on?
No, a lot of not close games there, and if you do roll back the tape, I think I said John Carroll would find it that week, and they were my pick out of those 3 to definitively win their game, and they put it all together against a struggling Hayden team. They did it on both sides, so my kudos go to the Cavs for getting their first win and doing it in impressive fashion.
Yeah, one of our top performers was from that game, and we're going to talk about those here in a minute. But first, here on the Under the Lights podcast presented by SYNLawn, let's do our interview segment. This week, we're going to be joined by William Galloway from Mountain Brook. Glad to be joined today by Mountain Brook Communications Director William Galloway. If you know anything about the city of Mountain Brook, you know William Galloway. He is Mr. Mountain Brook if there ever was one. So, William, we're glad you came on today. There is a reason that you came on today. It's because you're very involved with the football team this year.
Yeah, thank you for having me on, guys. I'm the play-by-play voice for Mountain Brook football this year, in my first season doing that alongside Wayne Ingram, my color analyst, and we have a great time on Friday nights. And October, it'll be a lot of Thursday nights, but we have a great time in the booth, and Mountain Brook's given us a lot to smile about, and it's been a great season so far. So thank you for having me on the podcast. I want to give a nod to SYNLawn because I really enjoy you guys' content each week, and I want to beat Gary in the rush to putting a putting green in my backyard.
It's already in the works. Don't take my putting green now.
Well, it'll be a race to Christmas when we can figure out who puts one in their backyard first.
I love that. Love that.
Awesome.
SYNLawn's been a great partner for us all fall. So, William, big game this week. Mountain Brook playing Oxford. Just kind of tell us what you've seen from the Spartans the first 4 games of the year. I mean, there's been some good, been some struggles. So, where do you see this team heading into obviously their biggest game of the year to this point?
Yeah, I've been very pleased with Mountain Brook's play on the field, and it's been really cool to watch the team in terms of development, right? Coach Yeager having 3 of his 4 non-region games in the first 3 games of the season, kind of getting a feel. And he and I do a weekly show. We talk about kind of the progress week over week, and it's kind of a new season now that region play is underway. You've got homecoming in 2 weeks, but nonetheless, a big game in Homewood. But when you look at this Oxford team, one of the best teams right in 6A, and having Clay, having Oxford both in your region and 6A Region 6 is obviously a huge challenge, but Mountain Brook has been very run heavy this year. I think probably 85 to 90% of their snaps for running the ball. I don't think Caden Hoffbauer has attempted more than probably 30 to 35 passes. And so, you kind of know what you're getting in a run-heavy Mountain Brook offense. The defense has been stifling. There were a lot of questions about Mountain Brook only returning less than a handful of starters on defense, less than a handful of starters total. But Mountain Brook's really answered the bell, learned a lot, and really developed week by week, and sitting now with a 3-1 record and facing one of the best opponents they'll see all year in their regular season. Obviously, you face Parker, you've got Clay ahead, but this Oxford team is going to present a lot of challenges for Mountain Brook.
Why do you think that run game, like 85 to 90% of the time, obviously, that's dominating the play calls, but why do you think it's been so successful? What about that offense is working well that's opening holes and that kind of thing?
Well, it starts with the offensive line, and I mentioned a lot of the returning starters, right? You go up and down the line, and all five of those guys, three of them are returning. You look at, and I'm going to leave some names off. I don't have my notes right in front of me, but Rocco Gray and Kevin Hughes and Parker Redden and Pearson Avery, Daniel Ellis, that's all five of our starters. But even in the tight ends, right, there's a lot of experience that returns there. So a lot of chemistry. And as you guys know, Coach Yeager really well, he's an offensive line guru. So it all starts right there. And especially, the play doesn't start without the center. Rocco Gray, a junior returner, is key for the Spartans. And Caden is using his feet to run a lot. And so Stuart Andrews has adapted from the wide receiver to the running position. So I would say, Gary, it starts really with the offensive line and their leadership, and they have just been dominant each and every week.
Give me some highlights from yours and Wayne's kind of rapport up in the booth. I mean, you've done PA work, like you're not a stranger to a microphone, but has been like being the consistent play-by-play guy for a team been a little bit interesting?
Yeah, I've really enjoyed it. And that's really what I feel like is in the wheelhouse of my priority in terms of my skill set. Like, I love doing it. It's been really fun. It's what I got my degree in at Alabama, doing sports broadcasting. So doing that each Friday night has been awesome. I got married over the summer, so it's a little bit of a sacrifice to spend time doing that. But I appreciate my wife, Anna, and her willingness to let me do what I love for a lot of people that I love. But Wayne and I, like I said a lot already, we have a really good time. We got a lot of chemistry, right? And so I've known Wayne. He went to Mountain Brook. He played for Coach Yeager. We were both at Alabama together for a couple of years. He's a little bit older than me, but I think the chemistry, and when you know somebody, right, how evident of this show, Gary and Kyle, you know each other so well, it plays off, and it's enjoyable for the audience. I've got a good relationship with a lot of our sponsors. I help coordinate that at Mountain Brook. And so having those relationships and knowing, when you bring up a Cadillac first down or a Taco Mama turnover, when you know those people who have developed those relationships to create those partnerships at the high school level, it makes it really fun, because it's almost like you're not talking about a company, you're talking about a group of people and people you have a relationship with. But Wayne and I, despite, any sponsored content or not sponsored content, pregame, in-game, post-game, I would say it starts with the relationship piece. We know each other really well, and we just have lots of fun broadcasting really good football. So that's a blessing.
Welcome back into Sporting Stadium. William Galloway alongside Wayne Ingram.
Formation. Looks like Andrews is the lone setback. Takes the give, princes into the end zone, touchdown, Spartans. Stuart Andrews puts Mountain Brook on the board first, pop the confetti, it's a Browning touchdown.
Now, Mountain Brook just says right there, we're going to bring our players up on the line, you bring yours, mano y mano, and the Spartans get the best of it. Walking into the end zone here, Wildcat formation, so you gain an extra blocker in the run game, and that's just textbook execution on the first drive for the Mountain Brook Spartans.
For Walthall in the end zone, but not able to find him. Here's Roberts. The kick is up. It is good from 35 yards. The Nichols Concrete field goal puts the Spartans up 10-0 with 5:49 to play. We'll take a 10-0 lead early, Wayne.
Absolutely. Great execution there by the place-kicking unit. Anderson doing a great job of bouncing back after some missed field goals early in the season. Gets the big make for the win last week, and that one sailed through the uprights pretty smooth.
Frank Lee back in, number 90. Good to have him back in a Spartan uniform, lined up for the first time this season. Great to have the senior on the Spartan defense. What a stop. Boyd Cooper answers the bell and brings up a big hit to bring up an Iron City third down.
Well, folks at home, don't adjust your TV sets. Pell City typically comes out in more of a pro-style offense, but if my eyes don't deceive me, I believe that's the triple option. The Spartans are ready for it, though, and to boot the ball down the field. Having it in your arms with 5 unblocked defenders headed your way is not a comfortable position. And here's Stuart Andrews.
Stuart Andrews finds his way into the end zone from 12 yards out. A Browning touchdown for the Spartans, and the offense wastes no time putting more points on the board.
Well, that's a Mountain Brook 2-minute drill right there. We come after the punt, get a tackle for loss, turn it over on downs, and one-play drives are good play drives if they end in touchdowns. So excellent job there by the offensive line, and Stuart Andrews going to a familiar place for him, which is the Spartan end zone.
What's been your favorite call so far this year? Favorite moment so far in the booth?
You know, I kind of had a Castellanos moment in the first game. Hampton King had an interception, and we were talking about Coach Thorson, who we lost this summer, Mountain Brook legendary coach for 25 years. You guys did some great reporting on him. But it was like, you know, the Castellanos home run, the saga that's ensued over the last couple of years, we're commemorating Coach Thorson, and all of a sudden Hampton King picks it off. And I'm thinking, here we are in my first game. I really screwed the pooch there. But it was cool because you could kind of feel Coach Thorson's presence, and he was so instrumental in the secondary, and Hampton King's been a crucial player for the Spartans, one of the returning starters on defense. And so what felt embarrassing really ended up being a special moment and a special call.
Yeah, for those
That's
that don't
awesome.
know what a Nick Castellanos moment is, just give it a little search on YouTube. I mean, there's a clip of a play-by-play announcer being very contrite and apologizing, and then interjecting a home run call to left field. So now that's a lot of fun. That's a lot of fun. So, you know, you like you said, you get to talk to Coach Yeager on the regular, and just kind of give us an idea. You know, it's kind of crazy. We're almost halfway through the regular season. So what kind of things is Coach Yeager the most pleased with from what he's seen as far as improvement, and what are some areas that this Mountain Brook team can still grow?
So you talk about improvement, Kyle, and I think the biggest thing we've seen is special teams, right? We've had missed kicks and missed PATs early on, and that's not to put it on one person. It's not the kicker's fault. It's not necessarily the snapper or the holder. But there's a lot of struggle in that early on, especially in the Hueytown game, and then Anderson Roberts and his group of guys, Sam Smith's the holder. We've had a variety of snappers redeem themselves by kicking a 40-yarder to win the game. And then you see Roberts come back this past week against Pell City. He knocks down a 35-yarder, a 40-yarder, and just you've seen his confidence grow tremendously. So I would say the rise in the special teams play has been exceptional. And then I would also say the defense, we knew coming in would have a lot of questions with their youth and their inexperience. They pitched a shutout against Demopolis, which was very impressive. There's been turnovers. I was actually just clipping our Turnover Tuesday video before we started this podcast. And I think, you know, there were 3 turnovers last week. There was a stop on fourth down from a punt. And so the defense has been stifling that area where they've grown tremendously in defense is just forcing turnovers. And then offensively, we talked about passing earlier in this podcast. And I think the biggest opportunity for growth is the passing game, because as we develop into region play and you see teams stack the box against Mountain Brook, which is probably the way that it should be done, you know, how is Caden Hoffbauer and the wide receiver crew going to respond after, you know, not even throwing a total of 40 passes through 4 games this season? So I think there's the most opportunity for growth in the passing game. And I think we're going to hopefully see a lot of development with that as we face really good teams in region play.
You know, Kyle mentioned that you and Coach Yeager talk on the regular. I'm curious, not having covered a Mountain Brook game this year, you know, every team every year is different. And Coach Yeager is one of the masters, too, of motivation. Every time we talk, I get a new book recommendation that I immediately order. It happens all the time. The last one was Boys in the Boat. That's a Coach Yeager recommendation. I'm wondering how he's going about motivating this particular team. What kind of things have stood out so far that are, you know, that he's trying to drive home with these guys?
I think I hadn't been to every practice and every, you know, locker room talk, but he is a master motivator. You're exactly right, Gary. And I think what he does well is the relationship piece with his players. You know, I can attest from personal experience that anytime I go see him or we have our standing, you know, Thursday morning, we record our pregame video. It's the relationship piece, right? He doesn't come in on his phone. He doesn't leave texting. He's not sitting there busy and occupied. He's got all those things going on. But when he's present with you, he's present with you, and he's pouring into you. He wants to hear about your week. And I think that's how he really motivates his guys. You know, I'm an Alabama fan, right? And we hear about the Kalen DeBoer connection piece of having great relationship with their players. And so I would say his relationships, and he's been, along with our Mountain Brook school system, big on hospitality and getting to know people. and knowing really who they are, not for football purposes, what they do on the field, but what they're doing in the classroom and what's going on at home. And so I would say the biggest motivator that Coach Yeager has is his ability to be able to connect with kids, who they are under the helmet and with their jersey off. He's done a great job at that.
Great stuff. That's William Galloway. William, looking forward to being out there with you on Friday. I wish maybe I need to invest in like the Spartan Nation. I don't know. Do you guys have an app that has an earpiece? I don't know. I need
We've
to be
got a
able to hear the call.
new athletic website, so check that out, mbhsspartans.com. You can follow Mountain Brook Athletics and Mountain Brook Football and all the accounts on social media. But hopefully we've got good weather on Friday night, Kyle, but come on up in the box if it does rain and we can have you on. We're hoping for the best weather possible, but you're welcome to join us on the broadcast at any point.
Awesome. Well, hey, it's been a great run so far. Looking forward to many more highlights as we go. But William, thanks a lot, man.
Thank you, guys.
All right, big thanks to William for coming on the show. Great guy, known him for a long time. He's a really good dude. So thanks to him for giving us some insight. I'm looking forward to seeing him on Friday night. But that leads right into our top performers segment from last week. You had the opportunity to vote on X for who you thought was the Under the Lights Player of the Week. Gary, let's run through these four real quick, and we'll start with Mountain Brook. Defensive back Henry Bell had an outstanding game. 10 tackles, intercepted a pass, recovered a fumble. Great game for him. John Carroll's Jackson Rankin did it on both sides of the ball. He caught a 15-yard touchdown and had 10 tackles of his own as John Carroll got their first win. We talked about Charlie Taft for Vestavia. 191 through the air, 162 on the ground, and 5 total touchdowns. And then Homewood running back, Evan Osmer, 95 rushing yards, 3 touchdowns. I think he could literally be on this list every single week. But you guys voted, and for this week's Under the Lights Player of the Week, Henry Bell from Mountain Brook. I gave a few Mountain Brook people some grief because they've had a few Player of the Week nominees, and the voting numbers were not great. So they came out in full force and voted for Henry Bell, who had a fantastic game, as did a lot of other guys. I mean, quarterback Caden Hoffbauer rushed for a ton. Running back Stuart Andrews rushed for a ton. They had some really good performances in that win over Pell City. But Henry Bell is the winner of the Player of the Week. I'm looking forward to seeing him against Oxford. I think he's going to need to make some more plays like that if Mountain Brook wants to compete with the Yellow Jackets. Yeah,
you're right about that. And just good to see a defensive player come home with the award this week. So I think that's our first defensive guy in these first 4 weeks to win one. So kudos to him on a big night.
Yeah, I'm with you there. It's always you're looking for defensive guys because as a sports writer, reporter, the drill. Like, it's so easy to write game stories where you just talk about who carried the ball and who had the yards. And you're always looking for the guys. You try to throw a mention in there, guys that make sacks or big tackles for loss or otherwise big plays. So we looked for a few of those. And even, Jackson Rankin from John Carroll, he was right there in that vote. He had a really good game on defense as well. So I'm glad we were able to showcase that side of the ball a little bit as well. All right, Gary, is it really like week 5 already?
Halfway there, man.
That is something else. That's crazy. But let's talk about week 5. We've got a full slate of games this week. And I want to start with our game of the week. I'll be out at Spartan Stadium on Friday night, hopefully with some great weather this time. I think the 2 weeks of rain has done enough punishment. It's time for some great fall weather, some football weather, and we're going to get that on Friday night. I'll be at Spartan Stadium. 3-1 Mountain Brook, 4-0 Oxford. It's going to be a tough game for the Spartans because this Oxford team looks pretty good based on what I've seen so far. So we had talked a little bit about Mountain Brook needed to string together a full game. Against Parker, they played a great first half, and then it kind of fell apart on them. Against Hueytown, they played a great first half, and then they needed to survive on that late field goal by Anderson Roberts. Last week, they thumped Pell City, and they did it through all 4 quarters. They're going to need to do that again this week if they want to potentially knock off this Oxford team that has looked the part so far.
Yeah, I think you're going to get a fun one, like matchups wise. It remains to be seen if this Under the Lights Game of the Week magic produces another, 5 points or less margin of victory type of game. We'll see. but two incredibly different styles. Oxford quarterback Mason Mims, he's a Louisville commit, and he can put the ball in the air, and Oxford will put the ball in the air, and they can score points, and they can score points in a hurry. Mountain Brook, on the other hand, like we just talked about with William Galloway, they're running it 85 to 90% of the time. So you kind of expect Oxford to stack the box and say, run it on us or pass the ball. So can Mountain Brook, can that offensive line, kind of finesse their way to moving the chains, keep that Oxford high-powered offense on the sidelines? That's what I'm looking forward to the most. I don't think that's necessarily a secret in this game. We'll see what wrinkles both teams throw in, because there's always something. But Oxford has something they're clearly good at. Mountain Brook has a type of game that they're clearly good at, and I'm just really interested to see which one wins out. I think Oxford is maybe the more talented team, athletically top to bottom, but this Mountain Brook team always has something. Like there's always something in a big game that they come out and do, or they come out and perform, to their best ability, that gives them a chance in the fourth quarter or gets them a win. So I think you've got a really intriguing game in that regard, that which style can win out. So looking forward to seeing what you get to see on Friday.
Even when the matchups look on paper to be not in Mountain Brook's favor, they always find a way to compete and make it a ball game. So can we make it 5 weeks in a row that the game of the week has been spectacular? I don't know. That's gonna be tough.
I hope so. I mean, a Shea Monroe offense for Oxford against a Mountain Brook defense is just super compelling.
Looking forward to it. All right, Gary, let's dive into the rest of the games. Let's start with some of the Class 7A Region 3 slate. Hewitt-Trussville back at home. They're playing Hillcrest. This Hewitt team, they got to bounce back from that disappointment last week, because if you beat Hoover, you're in the driver's seat for at least the number 2 seed in that region. And now you're in the mix with everybody else after a couple weeks of region play. So this Hillcrest team has certainly looked beatable the first few weeks of region play as they jumped up to 7A. But Hewitt's they're going to have to bounce back, and they're also going to have to move the ball a heck of a lot better than they have the last couple weeks.
Yeah, I think you're right. You said it. I mean, I think this is a bounce back game. You're back at home. You've got a Hillcrest team that, like we've talked about, I mean, they've struggled these first 2 region games, but they're still a good team. I think that 0-2 and the way they've lost, it is what it is, but I don't think they're as bad as what that looks like, if that makes sense. So, you're going to have to come out and really execute. And I think this offense will. I need to say something about Sean Tosma's defense, because those guys have played incredibly well all year. I think they're giving up a shade under 11 points a game so far, something like that. So really good defense. If that defense comes to play and does what they need to do, I think this offense is more than capable of putting up more than enough points to win this game and be kind of a get back right game for Hewitt-Trussville.
All right, now for the game that you will be at. A 3-1 Hoover team hosting 4-0 Prattville. This Prattville team has, been one of your favorites so far this year. JB Wallace doing a great job over there. This is the first time they've been in this region. And they've had 2 wins against teams that are, not in necessarily the top half of this region to start things off. So now here's their real test, and we're going to see what they're made of.
Yeah, I'm expecting a highly competitive game. I do think there's a small part of me that thinks this might be the welcome to Region 3 for Prattville, and I don't mean that in terms of like, I'm not saying Hoover 45, Prattville 6. Like I don't mean it like that. I mean it in terms of like physicality, right? I'm not even saying Prattville is going to lose the game. I just think this is one of those games where, Prattville has hit some big plays. They've been really successful with running back Tristan Blackman. He's a really good running back, tall. He can bruise you and he can outrun you. But I think this is probably the most physical team that Prattville has played to date. And you're coming to the Hoover Met. So I think Hoover, after last week, I don't really see a letdown there. I think if anything, they're going to be even more juiced up because they didn't play to their standard, but they still won the game. So I think there's going to be a lot of juice there for the Bucks. And I think Prattville's going to have to bring its absolute best to have a chance in the fourth quarter. So hoping for a good game. Just excited that I'm not going to jinx any. This isn't going to jinx anything, I promise. So I'm just going to say it. I'll be able to leave the rain jacket in the car this week. We're not going to have any rain. It's not going to happen. It's not in the forecast. James Spann told me, Gary, you're good. And I'm believing it and I'm speaking it into existence. So I think it's going to be a perfect Friday night and just looking forward to a dry notebook and a really well played football game.
There you go. Traditional high school football fans in this state will appreciate this matchup. These teams met 6 times in the state championship over about over a decade ago. They were perennial meeting each other in the state championship game. So it'll be fun to see those jerseys match up once again. All right, Vestavia Hills, fresh off their first win, now gets the easy task of hosting Thompson. No big deal. So it's going to be really tough for the Rebels to make that back-to-back. Thompson has very much looked a part of what they are, what they've been the last 7-8 years. So, I mean, Vestavia is going to take it's going to take one of those efforts like they had against Hewitt a couple weeks ago where they slow the game down and just try to grind it out. And I guess, hope that you're in it in the fourth quarter and see what happens.
What is your opinion of what you just said? Because this is something I'm curious about. Vestavia Hills over the last few years has been Thompson's kind of toughest test in the region. And I know it's obviously it's different personnel. It's all of that. But you've got the game at home. Is this one that after last week, do you see Vestavia Hills saying, let's try to grind this thing out and keep it under 20, that kind of thing? Or do you see Vestavia Hills saying, we're going to come at you and try to have Charlie Taft do what he did last week? What do you kind of think there?
I don't know anything about football, but my guess would be that they go the slow the game down route, try to limit Thompson's big plays and see if maybe Charlie Taft breaks a big run. I mean, we've heard, the last couple of years when the Rebels had John Paul Head at quarterback. John Paul Head is just a big dude, able to take the big hits and you felt comfortable, running him in those power situations over and over again. But even at that point, Evans had always told us, we're playing the long game here. We're not trying to, run him into the ground too early. But Charlie Taft is not anywhere near as the same stature as John Paul Head. Now, he's a tough runner. And honestly, that might be even more the reason, hey, we're not going to let you put your head down and barrel into the Thompson defensive line 25 times. So that's just my opinion. I think
Sure.
a similar game plan to what they employed at Hewitt-Trustful. Hope that Thompson's offense isn't very explosive and you got a shot.
Yeah, no, I tend to agree. I just was curious what your thoughts were there. Interesting game after last week. I mean, certainly I think Thompson is the better team and probably should win the game, but you never know. We'll see. We'll see how it turns out.
All right, Oak Mountain is hosting Tuscaloosa County. The Eagles have had 2 tough games after a 2-0 start, but this appears to be a chance for them to get a region win against a T County team that has not been able to gain any traction so far, but the schedule hasn't been particularly easy for them either. So I'm hoping Oak Mountain will kind of reestablish, get some of that momentum back that they started the season with.
Yeah, I mean, must-win game for both teams, both 0-2 in the region, both obviously right now on the outside looking in, probably will remain the case regardless of who wins this game, I would think. But Tuscaloosa County's had problems scoring the ball lately, and sans last week against Thompson, Oak Mountain really hasn't had a lot of trouble moving the ball so far this year and putting some points on the board. So I think if Oak Mountain executes the way it has all of this season, other than that Thompson game last week, I think this should be an Oak Mountain win. And, you need it to spring forward because I'm looking, let's see, down the stretch, they got to find some wins. They're at Hoover, host Vestavia, at Hewitt-Trussville, host Hillcrest. So you got to win this one if you want a chance. You can't go down 0-3.
Yeah, I would agree. So all right, those are the 7A games we've got. So let's move it along. Homewood at Jackson Olin on Thursday night. Homewood's 4-0. They've looked unstoppable. They really hadn't played anybody that could stop them yet. I don't think this changes. This JO team is 0-3. They are coached by UAB quarterback legend Joe Webb, who's back in Birmingham, and hopefully he'll do a good job with this JO program. But just taking it over, it's been tough sledding to get started. This looks like another Patriots win to go to 5-0.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, yeah, we'll see what Coach Webb can build out there at JO, because it's had its day. Like when Coach Vikakis was there, you know, they had some runs there, and but this particular team, they've scored 28 points all season long, and Homewood right now is scoring that in first halves. So this is a get out to that lead, play a lot of guys, and move to 5-0.
I've seen one Homewood at Jackson Olin game, and it was 2017, 19. I don't remember. 2018, I think is when it was. It was pouring down rain. I mean, and Jackson Olin, that was a natural surface at the time. It was as muddy as could be, absolutely miserable. And Tim Vikakis' group found a way to win that ball game. Man, that was some miserable weather.
Well, luckily we are done with the miserable weather this year. I've already spoken it into existence, and you're trying to bring it back, and I'm just not really sure why.
Well, I'm trying to bring something else into existence as well. I'm trying to help Briarwood get their first win. The Lions are 0-4. They're hosting Winona. This is a big region game for Briarwood, because I keep looking at this schedule, and it doesn't look good for Briarwood right now. They've just really struggled to get anything going. But a win over Winona, the playoffs are still certainly within reach for this Briarwood team. I mean, their region, there aren't any teams in this region that are just, head and shoulders above what Briarwood can be on their good days. So, pick up the pieces after. I mean, they got out ahead of Carver last week, and then it just kind of fell apart in the second half. But you put one together, get a win on the board, get some confidence. You never know where it might take you.
Yeah, and it seemed like the running game. I remember talking about that after covering the Briarwood Homewood game, that Briarwood without Luke Reynolds was going to need to find something in the running game, and he was back for a bit the other night, and I think exited that game as well. But before he did, he was already up to 60-something rushing yards on like 7 carries or something like that. So when he's out there, he's that dude. And then they had other guys, Brooks Allred ran the ball. They had some other guys, run the ball well too. So it's must-win territory. You can't go 0-3 in the region. And I don't think Winona scores a lot of points. So like you said, you have a huge opportunity here. Corner just shut out Winona, and I think Corner might be a pretty good ball club this year. They've beaten Ramsey already. They've shut out Winona. So regardless of record, I've seen this for years at Briarwood, because you've been gracious enough to give me a lot of Briarwood games, because I love going out there. But it doesn't matter what this team's record is. Those fans, those parents, those students show up, and they make it a pretty electric atmosphere, even if the team's 0-4. So I expect a good atmosphere, and maybe Briarwood gets that win number 1 this Friday.
Back in 6A, Chelsea puts its 3-0 record on the line. They're at home against Calera. And I didn't think much of this matchup until Calera went out and beat Pelham last week. So Chelsea's going to have to show up and play well, but the way that they played their first 3 games, coming off a bye week as well, I think if the Hornets play the way that we've seen them capable of, this looks like a pretty winnable game for them.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I'm a broken record. Region games at home, got to win them. Mm-hmm. And especially for this Chelsea team, like we've talked about, chance to go to 4-0 and 2-0 in the region. And I mean, that schedule's quite backloaded for them in Region 3. I mean, you've still got Spain Park, Helena, and Benjamin Russell on the horizon. So a game that's you probably should win. Maybe it's close. Maybe it's comparable teams in a way. I mean, they both beat Pelham by almost the identical score. I think Chelsea won 36-33, and then Calera won 35-33. So you can't get much closer than that. We'll see if this is a close game, a good game. Maybe it will be. And Chelsea's proven so far this year that they can win a bit of a shootout like they did with Pelham. They came from behind and beat Wetumpka in that really close, low-scoring game. So interested to see what they bring after a week off, and just see if they can stay undefeated.
I know the Calera coaching staff, they always hit me up for tips on their games. But if I could give them one this week, don't let Chase Strachner gain 300 yards on you. That would be a good starting point because he's been great for Chelsea.
Advice. Yeah, decent advice there.
All right. Spain Park, 3-0, hosting Benjamin Russell. This is a Benjamin Russell team that's been really good the last couple of years. Smitty Grider's come in and made that program really competitive once again. But it's hard to get a gauge on them. They're 2-2, but their schedule doesn't really tell me a whole lot to this point. So I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, we sort of know what we're getting, I think, with Spain Park's offense. It's a really balanced attack. I mean, Brock Bradley at quarterback, we know he can fling it. I mean, he's committed to Clemson, and he's got weapons. They can obviously run the ball with Shanks and Cowley. So I think they're a really well balanced offense. Can they do enough? Kind of like we talked about with their last game at Helena, and then a little bit with that Hoover game. Can you get out to a lead and keep your foot on the pedal, hold your opponent down, and not let them back in the game? Can you finish in that fourth quarter, in that second half? And yeah, like you said, this Benjamin Russell team's put up 55 points in back-to-back games, albeit against that Calera team, and then against Chilton County, which is, a program that's building under Eddie Wall in his first year. So, I think it's an interesting game. I don't think it's one that you can overlook by any means. I mean, Benjamin Russell's already 2-0 in the region. And you've got to be on your game and not get a scare at Jaguar Stadium Friday night. And I think Spain Park, I think they'll be ready to go.
Last game on the slate, John Carroll 1-3 at Ramsey 1-3. This game will be played at Legion Field on Friday night. Always love going over to that place. Such a historic venue. I'm afraid it's not going to be so historic for John Carroll on Friday night. This Ramsey team they're not what they were last year. They were the runners-up last year, but this team is a far cry from that. However, they are still a pretty competitive squad, and it's going to be tough for John Carroll in this one.
It is, but I don't think it's unattainable either. I was there at Legion Field to see what Clay Chalkwell did to Ramsey, and I mean that was just abusing. But in region, when you get to some teams more your size, more your depth, that kind of thing, maybe John Carroll is starting to put it together. I think Garrett Barnes has really sort of impressed us, I would say, in his first year starting so far. He's, he hasn't made a ton of mistakes, and completion percentage has been good. They've proven they've got some playmakers, Karan Wright, Aubrey Walker. There are pieces there. Just can you hold up for 4 quarters with so many guys playing both sides of the ball against a Ramsey team that is also searching for a region win and really needs one? So I'm not saying that John Carroll's going to win the game. I just think I think this game has the potential to be closer than maybe a lot of people think when they just see the matchup or see the helmet game, right? Like, oh, Ramsey's at home against John Carroll. Ramsey, I just think maybe this one's a bit closer.
All right, well, that's all we got on this week's Under the Lights podcast presented by SYNLawn. We've driven down the field, talked about all the games for our goal line stand today. Gary, I noticed this in college football a lot. After week 1, everybody knows everything about every team. We are through 3 games with some teams, 4 games with some teams. Do we know everything yet about who's good, who's not good, who's better than who?
Here's what I'll tell you. I'll tell you what I do know. You ready for what I do know?
Yep.
The Braves are done. Alabama's going to beat Georgia on September 28th. Auburn's not going to make a bowl game. And the Celtics will repeat as the NBA champions. Now, high school football, I don't know anything. Everything I just said, who knows? That's why they play the games. I'm slightly certain on some of them, and I am completely pontificating on the rest. So, we know a little bit, but we don't know a lot, is how I would describe it. What do you know?
I know that about half of what you just said is wrong.
Which half?
The Braves aren't completely done. Auburn's going to win at least 7 games. The Celtics are not going to win the championship because the Suns are going to be healthy this year. So anyway,
that's a big prediction, just to say the Suns are going to be healthy.
That is a big prediction. But yeah, I think you're right. I mean, I think we know that Spain Park's really good. I think we know that Hoover and Hewitt are both pretty good. And everybody else, you got to prove it. Got to keep proving it in some cases. So we shall see. Yeah. But big thanks to SYNLawn for their sponsor of the podcast all fall. It's been a big boost to what we've got going on here at the Under the Lights team. Like we've told you, you need to be following us on X at Underlights365. Find Under the Lights on Facebook and Instagram. There's plenty of unique content there as well. Look, Friday nights are a lot of fun. They're a lot of chaos. It's hard to keep up with what's going on. So if you can't keep up with the constant stream of Twitter posts, X posts, you need to sign up for our Saturday morning newsletter. It'll hit your inbox. Saturday morning has everything that we did for the night before and gives you the first opportunity to vote for the player of the week. Congrats again to Henry Bell from Mountain Brook. But Gary, I guess I will send you to a pleasant Friday night full of a sunset, no rain, and hopefully good football.
No rain, a big parking lot, space to sprawl out. I couldn't ask for anything better.
All right. Well, that's this week's Under the Lights podcast presented by SYNLawn. We will see you next time.